There's a quiet question most people carry around. Am I doing okay or am I falling behind? Paycheck, Paul wonders this too. Not because he's reckless, not because he's careless, but because it's surprisingly hard to know what normal actually looks like when it comes to money. You see headlines about luxury cars, vacation photos scroll past on your phone, and somehow it always feels like everyone else has it figured out. So today we're going to slow down and look at reality. Not to judge, not to scare, but to understand where the average person actually stands financially and what those numbers quietly reveal. When people hear financial statistics, they often picture extremes, either someone thriving or someone barely scraping by. But most people live in the middle. Average doesn't mean successful. It doesn't mean failing. It means typical behavior, repeated over decades. And the truth is, most people don't compare themselves to real data. They compare themselves to impressions, which is why understanding the numbers matters, not to compete, but to orient yourself. Let's begin with income. For a full-time worker in the US, earnings tend to cluster around the middle, not the top. When you break it down weekly and annualize it, the typical full-time worker earns around the low to mid $50,000 range before taxes. That's not household income. That's individual income. And after taxes, deductions, and payroll contributions, take-home pay shrinks fast. For many people, that means the money they feel they earn and the money they actually control are very different things. This is where stress often begins, not because people are irresponsible, but because margins are thin. Earning money is only the first chapter. What matters more is what happens next. When researchers look at household spending, a pattern appears almost everywhere. Housing comes first. Transportation follows closely. Food takes another large share. Before savings even enter the conversation, most income is already spoken for. For the average household, monthly spending often lands well north of $5,000, which means many people aren't failing financially. They're just fully committed. Every dollar already has a job. This is where things get uncomfortable. When economists look at savings behavior, they find that the typical person saves only a small percentage of their income, often somewhere in the single digits. And that savings isn't just for retirement. It has to cover emergencies, cars, home repairs, and life itself, which means long-term investing often gets whatever is left, if anything is left at all. This isn't laziness, it's arithmetic. Now let's talk about the future. When people hear retirement, they imagine decades of preparation. But when you look at the median balances, the middle point, the picture is sobering. Many people reach later stages of life with far less saved than they expected. Not zero, but not enough to replace income comfortably. And a significant portion of the population has no dedicated retirement savings at all. This means retirement plans quietly rely on one thing: continued work or outside support. Social Security helps, but it was never designed to replace full income. For most recipients, benefits cover basic necessities, not flexibility. And because benefits depend on lifetime earnings, they vary widely, which is why some people treat Social Security as a foundation and others treat it as a backup. Understanding the difference matters. Here's another piece of the puzzle: debt. For many households, debt isn't catastrophic. It's normalized. Credit cards, auto loans, student loans, individually manageable, collectively heavy. High-interest debt, in particular, quietly drains future options. Not because people are careless, but because short-term convenience often feels necessary in the moment. Interestingly, average credit scores are decent, which tells us something important. Many people pay bills on time. They try to be responsible. But a good credit score doesn't always mean financial stability. It just means someone is managing obligations, not necessarily building freedom. If you combine everything, what people own and what they owe, you get net worth. And net worth tells a deeper story. Early in life, it's usually low. Midlife, it rises slowly. Later years, it often peaks lower than expected. Not because people didn't work hard, but because consistent saving is harder than consistent earning. Here's the important part. These statistics aren't here to discourage you. They're here to show that average behavior leads to average outcomes. And the bar for above average is not extreme. Saving slightly more, avoiding high-interest debt, investing consistently, hey, even modestly, those small differences compound quietly over time. Paycheck Paul doesn't need perfection. He doesn't need to outperform everyone. He just needs awareness. Because once you understand what most people do with money, it becomes clear how to choose differently, calmly, intentionally, and over time. This was Paycheck Paul, and this is how money really works. Thanks for watching. We'll check back in on Paul next time.